really want to see the walls, actually.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thrilled.
I'm just going around the Abbey cleaning, and then I'll be...
You're not far off, I would say. It depends. Who's this for?
My mother.
She doesn't say.
Oops. That's mine. And I'm allowed because
it's a bit more like Dorset, I'd say.
Dorset.
Yeah, that was quite good.
But it was constructed in a very similar to... Look at everyone. To the nave. From round Skewing, rough.
I don't know, Skewing.
Oh, you don't want to.
There might be people watching.
It's lovely. Who lived and worked in Easby Abbey, but also the thousands of... It's a lovely, lovely part of the world. Very picturesque. Expensive houses, lots of employment. That the Abbey was built here at all. No. No. Welcome, everybody, to the Bakery Bears video show featuring a spanking brand new episode of the rise and fall of the monasteries.
Oh, yes, it's very, very lovely.
6 months ago, we started this wonderful series and we headed to Hartlepool and then we popped to a generic abbey to learn the layout.
Generic abbey.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? It's good. It's good. Now, I promised you when we were there that we'd head back to discover its story, and today we do. Yes, we're going for a look around Easby Abbey, and we're going to meet a man whose name, I think it's fair to say, certainly appears all over England. And I think it probably is the world. He's actually going to be there. No, his name. His name occurs, and that's St Augustine.
That would be amazing if he was actually there, wouldn't it?
That name, I mean, it'd be interesting to know if you've heard that. Well, when I say heard of that name, some of you might have heard of that name because you might know who the man is, but are there any things around you called St Augustine? Like in this country, we might have St Augustine's Way, a road.
We've got a school in our town.
St Augustine's School. You'll get St Augustine's Church.
Yeah.
So, do you have St Augustine where you live? You may well do. So do let us know, comment in the show notes below. Neil, do you remember Allred, St Allred from Revo and his amazing words? Well, St Augustine inspired St Allred. And when you hear some of St Augustine's words, which we're going to do later on in the episode, you certainly do.
Very, very wise words.
Yes.
Listen closely to the wiseness. Is that a word?
Well, let's make it a word. I think it is a word, actually.
Is it? Wiseness. Sounds right.
Now, and what a show we have in store for you today. Oh, my goodness. Because, are we launching a pattern?
We are indeed.
Now, that's where things get exciting. And when we also ratchet up the excitement to another level is when we find out the type of pattern that it is. Because it's socks.
Pair of socks coming today.
Who doesn't get excited about a new sock pattern?
It's kind of miraculous. I did not expect to be doing this today.
Yes.
But thanks to some absolutely super-duper amazing test knitters.
Yes.
I am able to do it today.
Very exciting. So
very exciting.
Lots of sock launch talk in what's on and what's off your needles. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But also, I have the most entertaining and enjoyable job in the world. Oh. Because, we get to do lots of amazing things. An average day for us, we might be planning shoots, we might be filming tutorials, we might be doing any number of different things. Planning Christmas, what's going on in the Advent calendar. Could be out recording a radio show, who knows what. But the times where I smile the most often is when I'm editing up things that Kay has filmed. Now, I am merely, at this moment, doing what I was told. And that is, Kay said, after I said that's going in the final edit of what I'll tell you in just a moment, she said, well, we're going to have to talk about this somewhere. So, here is the scene. We are in the middle currently of our summer of stitching. We've finished our beachcomber socks, and we are now about to start.
We have started.
Oh, yes, we did.
We have.
Yesterday. Oh, well, of course, Tuesday this week.
Yes.
The beginner guide to cross-stitch went out.
Yes.
And that's leading into something, actually, which you're going to see later on in the show today.
Yes.
Kay is taking through in a 5-part if you include the beginner. It's a 5-part cross-stitch tutorial series and then a 5-part bag making series. Well, I was editing up the cross-stitch series. And Kay was at the start and she's doing her introduction. And this happened.
Oh, doesn't it look lovely? I love the way it looks on this really... How on earth did I say really like that?
It sounded like someone on the telly. Really, really nice. She did an impression of Eddie Griswold. You know the scene. You know the scene. Eddie, Clark, in the shop. They are buying things, aren't they? It's dog food. He's putting loads of dog food on. Things for Eddie, who's turned up and he's got no money at all. And Clark says, oh, look, we want to give you guys a good Christmas. So if you want to, let us know what to get the kids and things. So Eddie gives him this whole long list. And then he says, and Clark, I want to save a little bit for you and get you something really, really nice. Listen again.
On this really...
It's Eddie Griswold. Now, I'm sat there editing it. And I'm like, I can't cut this.
Because when I was filming it, I was like, why did I say it like that? And we had this whole conversation.
Yeah, they heard it.
Oh, right, okay. I said, that can't possibly stay. Why did I say it like that? And we redid it. And then when he's editing it, he said, I've got to leave this in. I said, you cannot leave it in. I said, I sound like an absolute fool. He said, no, I'm leaving it in.
And she said, well, we've got to talk about it somewhere.
I said, well, if you leave it in, I've got to mention it. Because otherwise people will be like, what? What did she just say? And why did she say it like that?
Everyone is wondering what it looks like edited up. Kay's really, really nice comment. What's it going to look like in the tutorial, which is going out, I think, the first week in July? Here we go.
I hope you really enjoyed working the bunting. Oh, doesn't it look lovely? I love the way it looks on this really icy blue fabric.
Perfect. No one would be any the wiser. And this is why I love my job, because Kate always comes at some point. It's why you're a joy to film and a joy to film with.
I know, you're very kind. Dan always says this, he'll be editing away over there and I'll be working over here and he'll just suddenly go into fits of laughter because he might have the headphones on and I won't know.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, what have I done now? What have I said now? And
you see, what Kay doesn't realise is, what it does is, it makes something which could be routine and straightforward, she brings it to life by giving it personality.
By being stupid.
She gives it personality, and so that makes the editing of it really wonderful. But then we're very lucky. We get so much wonderful feedback about these tutorials that you do.
Yeah.
That beginner guide to... Did you see the message I forwarded on to you?
I did see a message from a patron.
A lovely lady sent a message saying she'd been cross-stitching 40 years.
40 years, and she'd learnt 2 new things just watching...
and that was your beginner guide?
The beginner guide. Yeah, and, but I think that's the case, isn't it, with anything? And, I learn things all the time.
Yeah. And
I think as long as you're open to it, because I guess your attitude, if you had been doing something for a long, long time, you can be like, oh, there's nothing that
So credit to that lady,
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Because you do have to be open to it, and some people might just think, I'm going to skip that. I know all about cross stitch.
Yeah.
But you can pick up these little tiny hints and tips, that it might be something that's occurred more recently within that genre,
also,
that you weren't aware of.
It picks up on what we spoke about the other time on the video show, which is how, like a chef will cook a bolognese in a slightly different way, and you might learn something from the way that particular chef approaches it, even though you know what goes into a bolognese.
Yeah. I think that's the joy of life, isn't it? You're never too old to learn, I don't think.
My goodness, this has got deep very quickly today.
Very wise.
My goodness.
This, isn't it? Must be the heat getting to us.
Oh, no, don't talk to me about
heat.
Don't even
talk about the weather.
I'm
just not even entertaining. I'm not... Anyway,
who cares about the weather?
Yes, I've still got I've still got these glasses on, everyone.
We don't want to.
Still got these ones on because I went to get my new glasses, my old glasses that have got new lenses in, and they were all wrong. They were all kinds of wrong. I cannot even begin to tell you how wrong these glasses were.
They fit wrong. They did the lenses wrong. Everything was wrong.
The fitting was the frame was completely wonky. I went in twice to get that sorted out, and the lenses were wrong. I kept them for nearly a week thinking I'll get used to these. No. So I went back in, I said, look, these are not right. And they looked at them, they went, no, they're not right. So they're redoing them let's see. We can. You know,
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. At least they admitted their mistake.
yeah, we'll see if they can get them right this time.
Look, that's enough waffle.
Waffle.
Because there's way too much wonderful things to
Yes.
see. So without further ado, I shall say, Kay Jones, what's on your needles?
Okay.
I can't believe I did it right. I think I got it wrong last time.
You got it wrong. You were what's offing, weren't you?
I was doing all sorts last time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
It was an allergy heat-ridden mess.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't even. Right. So.
Ooh,
Oh,
I know, I'm excited.
the first thing I've got to show you is a pair of Fairground Socks.
Oh my goodness.
Now, the Fairground Socks you've seen before as a design in progress, and these are the socks that we said have been launched. The pattern has been launched.
That's a lot more exciting than that lead-in you just gave.
I'm sorry.
This project, your test knitters came back en masse. The reason why they knit it fast is because it's an addictive sock.
Because it knits like fast.
Yes.
You know, I'll tell you why. Because it's a combination of two things. So I'll show you this one. The pair, I've got finished pairs to show you later, but this pair is almost finished as well, actually. Oh, isn't this yarn just amazing?
I think this is the... Well,
Is this
you've
your
got another one on
favourite
the
out
go.
of the
I think
three?
it probably is my favourite out of the three.
Yeah. It's just fabulous. So this yarn is from Lovely Carrie at Freckled Whimsy, and it's called I Carried a Watermelon. And isn't it just perfect for summer? And someone said actually when they saw this that the little eyelets look like the seeds in the watermelon. And I'd not thought about that, and of course it absolutely does now they've said that. But this pair is the pair where I put in my butterfly heel. You can see here it's a mock short row heel, so that just means a pretend short row heel. So there's no short rows involved because I don't like working short rows. I find them a bit tedious. This is a heel that's in existence. This technique is in existence, but I modified it to my own liking, if you like, which I suppose is the case for every heel flap and gusset, isn't it? Every designer has their own little modifications. This is a mock short row heel. It's worked with increases and decreases, and then you finish up with this lovely heel. And the fit actually is really good. You know, Bryony she's got a few pairs with this heel in. You've got a pair with this heel in.
Yeah.
You say actually this heel, the socks fit more like a pair of socks you would buy in the shop, in the shops, because it's always this type of a heel, isn't it, in a bought pair of socks. But Bryony wears them all the time and she can't tell the difference, so that's really good. So within the pattern for the Fairground Socks, there's two heels. There's this one, and then there's also a standard heel flap and gusset, and you'll see those pairs later in what's off. So yeah, this one's completely finished. And aren't the colours just gorgeous? And the second one is well on the way to being finished. It is, gosh, I think I've got, let's have a look. I've got 1, 2, 3, I've got 4 more stripes and the toe, and this pair will be finished. So here's the second one. I think it's nice to see them, isn't it? Unfinished. Oh, isn't it lovely? So there's that heel, look. And it's worked in as you go. You know, you work the leg, you then stop working the leg, you pick up your heel yarn, you work your heel, cut your heel yarn, go back to your main colour and carry on. And it works perfectly. It's quick as well, it's really quick. And then you can just carry on with the stripes. So the advantage of this type of a heel, of course, is that you don't get any disruption at all with the stripes. Whereas with a heel flap and gusset, you do get a bit of a disruption. But the pairs I'm going to show you, I've used a heel turn that minimises that. And actually, they look really good. I don't think the disruption in the stripes is bad at all. I think it's really good. So you can put in either of those two heels, or you could knit 2 pairs and try them both. So this is the second sock, as you know, that I've nearly finished now. And the yarn's gorgeous. Carrie's yarn is just so lovely. The colours, you know, this one in particular is bright and fun and very sort of saturated. The other pair of Carrie's yarn I'm going to show you, the colours in that as well are really intense. You know, the way she's dyed the yarn. And I blocked the other pair, and the colours are much darker than this, and I didn't have any bleeding at all in the water, so that's brilliant. So yeah, these are the Fairground Socks, and the pattern is out now. I mean, I'll talk a bit more about the launch and everything in What's Off, because I've got some finished pairs to show you.
What were you striving for with this design with regards to it being self-striping?
My aim with this design was to create a pattern that works with self-striping and that sort of emphasises the stripes. You can clearly see the stripes, but there's a pattern in there that gives some movement. That's what I wanted. I wanted some movement.
You wanted undulating curves.
Yes, I wanted undulating curves. And, that's what I've absolutely got.
That's what she put in the pattern, everybody.
I did put undulating curves.
I just want to get that out there, just so I suddenly thought that sounds bad.
No. But, yeah, so this pattern, this stitch pattern is completely my own creation. So it's my own version of, I guess, like a feather and fan or an old shale. But I started from scratch with a piece of paper and a pen, and I created it completely myself, so it's not come from a stitch dictionary at all. And, because that's the way that these were created, it's just made them feel that little bit more special.
Completely organic, I think. Really
organic. And, it's the thing that makes these so supersonic quick to knit, I think, is because you've got the stripes, which always, self-striping yarn, I feel like it always feels like it knits quicker. Because you do a few rounds and then you're on another colour and you're like, oh, I'll get to the next colour, It's that potato chippy thing. But then if you add in...
What, potato chips? Oh, crisps.
Crisps, sorry. Yeah, the saying is...
For a minute, I was transported to America.
No, well, the saying is it's potato chippy, isn't it? You don't say it's crispy, because that doesn't mean...
So I suppose that saying doesn't...
It's potato
It doesn't make a massive amount of sense in this country.
Well, I think everybody in this country now is aware that in America, crisps are called chips. And here, chips are fries in America.
So when I say 101 then, should I stop saying the and?
Oh, yeah, that's another thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Should I say 101 now instead of 101?
We noticed this on American football American football programmes.
And if I take a different route to school, should I say I've gone a different route?
Yeah. There's so many differences, isn't there? But yeah, the missing the and off dates we hear a lot. And because there's a lot of numbers involved, isn't there, in American football? So it's like 101, 102, and we're like, and. It's just the differences in the way that people speak.
Well, it's like what I have always said. Wonderful English, didn't sound very good.
No.
And that is, we may use the same language, but that doesn't mean we speak the same language.
No, I think it's a case of like British English and American English. I think
two different things.
They are two different things. We were watching Hard Knocks. Was it Hard Knocks we were watching last night? Or an All or Nothing.
All or Nothing.
And one of the players said something like, I should have went.
What? Oh.
I should have went. And I'm like...
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Should have gone.
I think he meant I should have gone.
Right.
I should have went to so-and-so. And I'm like, what? And to me and to us, that just sounds grammatically wrong. But I don't think it's necessarily grammatically wrong in the US.
Well,
I think that's just...
I think people need to realise, English people need to realise that it's a different language.
Yeah, I think it kind of...
Maybe using same words, but it is a different language.
It's said in a different way, yeah. It's interesting hearing the differences.
Very interesting.
So yes, so it's a combination of the stripes, the self-striping, and the stitch pattern, which is also really quick to knit. It's one of those stitch patterns where when you actually knit it up, you're thinking, gosh, this looks really fantastic for what you have to do. You get a lot of bang for your buck, is what I'm trying to say with the stitch pattern. I've got another pair on the go, which I'm going to show you on the next show, where I'm making a scrappy pair. So I'm using the same stitch pattern, but I'm using scraps and leftovers, and they're looking absolutely amazing. So that's another possibility that you can use this stitch pattern and make scrappy socks. So I'll show you those next time. So yeah, these are the Fairground Socks, and they are out now, and I'll talk a bit more about that in What's Off Your Needles. So, Dan Jones,
Yes.
what's on your needles?
Something that's in a great big tangle. There's yarn everywhere.
no.
I have been monogamously knitting for about 2 weeks the wind sheaf.
Oh, right.
I've just been knitting this over and over and over again. And it's enabled me to calculate how long I think... Well, I mean, first of all, how much longer do you think I need to go on that? There you go. You can have a look.
Oh, hang on.
So it's the wind sheaf. It's by Stephen West. It's a very, very good pattern. It's updated lots. So clearly he
He's
cares a
done
lot
quite-
about all his patterns, which is marvellous.
Yeah, he's done a few updates. You're not far off, I would say. It depends. Who's this for?
My mother...
She doesn't sound like that.
Sorry, I was trying to sound like Somerset. And I'm allowed because
It's a bit
all
more
my...
like Dorset, I'd say.
Dorset.
Yeah, that's quite good. I love a Dorset accent.
Well, all my ancestry is from there.
Yes, on your mum's side.
I'm allowed to try and do that. Well, also on my dad's side, it's all from
really?
the south. It's all from that part of the world. Granted, they may have been over the water, over the Bristol Channel,
Well, your dad's from Wales.
from round Skewing, rough.
I don't know, skewing.
Oh, you don't want to.
There might be people watching.
It's lovely. It's a lovely, lovely part of the world. Very picturesque. Expensive houses, lots of employment.
He's really bad. You're really terrible. I can't help laughing.
So this is my wind sheaf. And
Yes.
but I can't call it that. I have to call it the windswept because that is what I always called it.
Do you always call it the windswept? It looks great in this yarn.
When I knitted it before, that's what I called it the whole time.
Did you? You kept calling it the windswept.
So did you.
Maybe-
You were
did
following my
I?
lead. Yes, you were just following my lead.
Maybe we should write to Stephen
And
and say,
apologise.
dear Stephen,
This
can
was
you
years
just
ago.
change it? Because we can't get our head around. What does winds chief? Is it winds
Wind
chief?
sheaf. Wind sheaf.
So winds chief.
Oh, look.
Winds chief.
Look.
What does it mean, that?
Should we talk about that?
Okay, sorry.
So you don't think I've got far to go?
I don't think so, no. When you
Right.
look at the length of that.
Because
your mum's not got a huge head.
we have to
She's got
sort
quite a small head.
of work to your
and
noggin, I think.
She won't want it slouchy.
Certainly not. Can you imagine my mum in a slouchy hat?
Not really.
No. Wouldn't work.
No.
Wouldn't work. So
It's really lovely in the yarn.
I've been thoroughly enjoying knitting this, and I'm sort of into now the concept of knitting hats.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to the next hat that I may knit. And what I'm very excited about, and anyone who saw the self-contained knitter which came out yesterday will know that for the first time in my life I used yarn. Well, no, for the first time in my life I saw the benefits of having a stash.
Oh,
Because-
yes, you were really excited, weren't you?
Yes, I happen to be in my extremely poor effort of a stash. There's about 3 amazing things, and the rest is all total rubbish. And one of the amazing things turned out to be a hand-dyed skein of water sprite
In DK.
in DK.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I didn't want to get excited until I'd asked Kay, because I'm a bit stupid when it comes to things like this. So I showed it to Kay and I said, could I knit a hat with that? And she went, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Of course you can.
He's like, what's
I'm like,
this?
yes.
He came into the bedroom going, what's this? I've just found it. I said, it's yarn. He said, did you dye this? I
It's
said,
from my stash.
I said, I did.
Oh my goodness.
He's like, I can knit a hat with this, can't I? I'm like, well, yeah, if you want to.
I was very excited. So I'm seriously looking forward to casting on my next hat. The question is, what do I knit? But that is excitement to come.
The thing with this yarn, so where's your tag? Please tell me you kept the tag right.
Well, I could not. It's humongous.
It is humongous. So it's Sirdar jewel spun.
I need a separate bag just for the tag.
They are huge, aren't they? And then there's another bit as well. They're always like this, aren't they? They're very complicated, I find, these types of labels.
It
So
would
this-
look lovely, that, and a plain jumper.
Yeah, it would. Well, it depends how it knits up, but it would. So it's 0844 Glacier is the colourway. And it barely looks like you've used any yarn at all.
Yeah, it's a bit frustrating.
This still looks
I need
exactly...
a garment bag.
Isn't it lovely? Look at that.
Well, it is lovely, but you need a garment bag to fit your project in.
It's 200 grams, that's why. It's huge. Look, it covers my entire head now.
So what is this designed for?
Would it cover... Look, it covers Dan's entire head.
What is this designed for? Why is it so big?
I don't know.
Because it's a bit annoying.
I don't know why it's so big. It's Aran weight, I suppose. So, well, it's not. I don't think this is Aran weight. I have an issue with weights.
Can you
of
imagine
yarn,
how
can I
hard it
just
would be
say?
to cake this up?
Oh, you couldn't. You'd need one of those jumbo ball winders,
Yeah.
wouldn't you? But it's already in a kind of...
It is. I mean, it's been fine to
Thing.
work from, but it's the only frustration has been that takes up all of my bag. And so it is a bit awkward to sort of transport around.
Yeah, you see, I don't think this is Aran weight. It's 200 grams, right? And you get 500 metres. So 100 grams is 250 metres. That does not seem like an Aran weight to me. It is quite lofty, so it doesn't weigh a lot. So that's going to influence how much yardage you get. But still, looking at the thickness of it, I don't think this is Aran weight. I would call this a DK, personally.
That's my wind sheaf. And, I mean, I'm motoring towards the finish, so who knows? Who knows?
You could probably get about 4 hats
I
out
know.
of that. More, maybe even more, I don't know.
The next time you see
Crazy.
this, I may be on the degreases, or I may have finished it.
You probably will have finished it, won't you?
What else is on your needles?
Okay, so the next thing that I've got to show you is, and it's a new design. Oh my goodness. It's just too much. It's just too much, this episode. So this is...
It's not being released, though, not for ages.
No.
So
this is what will be
everyone,
my...
calm down.
Yeah, no, don't get too excited. This will be my next platinum design. So this will be coming out on the 1st of September. So we've just had a platinum design on the 1st of June, which was the hat, which was the Land of Spells hat. So this is going to be the 3rd. So this is the little collection within a collection that I'm creating.
Epic.
All inspired by Enid Blyton, Magic Faraway Tree. So we've had the Magic Faraway mitts, which were some fingerless mitts. We've had the Land of Spells hat, which was the last one that was released on the 1st of June. So this is the 3rd. And I'm going to show you my progress on what this item is. And they've all been, I've kept them all in this lovely bag from Jill at Bertie and Poppet, because it just suited the whole...
It's autumnal.
It's very autumnal.
Which is absolutely perfect, because that's when this one goes on release.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So what I've done with this little trilogy of patterns is all the way through I've used the same yarn. So we started with 2 skeins of a sort of solid tonal yarn that I dyed myself. You don't have to do that, obviously, but you would have needed 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn that were the same, and then a set of minis, so a set of 5 20-gram minis, and we've used those all the way through. So this is the conclusion. So this is the project that will kind of use up all of that yarn, and it's a cowl. I just thought that would be really nice. So we've got mitts, we've got a hat, and we've now got a cowl. So we've got a lovely set to wear in the autumn when the weather turns beautiful and cool.
And it's definitely not too matchy-matchy.
No, it's not too matchy-matchy at all. And what I decided to do with this one, for a change, because I've done quite a few fingering weight cowls, so I decided that this one was going to be a thicker weight cowl. So I'm holding everything double. Oh, it's looking really nice, actually. And it's a lovely change to knit a cowl using a thicker yarn, because I haven't done one, I don't think, since I did the harbour cowl, and that's a few years ago now. Generally, I knit fingering weight cowls, so this has been lovely. So I won't tell you at this stage what the inspiration is from the book or what the name of the design is. We'll keep that secret, but I am going to show you where I'm up to. This is made up of these lovely lace panels interspersed with some sort of garter and plain sections in the minis. So I'm working through this. So I've got 5 minis, and you can see I've got 2 of those colours in at the moment, and then we are alternating it with the main colour in this lovely lace design. And it's got a 2x2 garter rib, because that seemed to match the feel of what I was after, because we've got garter ridges going across here, and then we've got some garter in the rib, which is really nice. And I started off with 100 grams of this main sort of nutmeggy colour. Split it in half and I'm holding them double. But I've also got 35 grams left over from the other two projects. So I'm certain I'm going to have to use this as well. So, because I wanted not to have a huge amount of leftovers. The two colours that I've worked in the minis so far, I've just got like little nuggets left. So these are the 2 bits of leftovers from one mini. I didn't want to use up like every scrap because I know everybody's gauge is different. So I wanted to leave a little bit of leeway. So I think there's like 2 grams in each half, if you know what I mean, left over. So there is a bit of leeway so that you won't be sort of playing yarn chicken. I'll just see how I go with this. I am monitoring how much I'm using per section, and I'm sure when I initially worked it out that we'll be okay. So it won't be like my usual cowls are quite long. This won't be super long like that because it's thicker. So you don't want it to be as long as a fingering weight cowl, otherwise I think it will be too much bulk around your neck. So this one will be slightly shorter and appropriate for the weight of yarn. But it's been really lovely to knit and it makes a really nice change. But I think it's got a kind of woodsy feel, hasn't it? I'm not going to give anything else away, but I think it does have a bit of a woodsy feel. And that yarn that I dyed up, it's just such a lovely colour, isn't it? So I'm really enjoying that, and you probably won't see this again, maybe not until it comes out.
Tell everyone about the design meeting we had.
Oh, it was really funny, right? So we were sat on the sofa. I can't remember what we were doing. We often just start talking about something work-related. And I said to Dan, I need to get on and design the next platinum pattern. And he's like, what is it you're doing? And I said, I'm doing a cowl this time. And I said, I'm using those yarns, and this is the kind of theme and whatever. So he went and got a piece of paper and a pen, and he's like, why don't you do this?
No.
It wasn't it?
No, what happened was, Kay was like, what would you do?
Is that what I said?
Yeah, Kay's like, what would you do? And I'm like, and then I was just like off. It was really weird, and I like spilling out all this stuff, and I'm just talking completely wrong, and you're like, I don't understand what you're saying. So I tried again, and Kay's like, I still don't understand what you're saying. Look, take this piece of paper and try and draw it.
Yeah.
So I did. I drew this thing out, and it was like.
No, but I understood.
It was all terrible.
No, it wasn't.
And it was an embarrassment.
It wasn't. No,
but
it wasn't
it was
at all.
the most sort of enthusing, exciting. It was so cool to be sort of drawn into that design process. It was just really fun, and I'm like,
It was really fun.
I felt like Kay just left a little crack in the door. A creativity crack that I was able to crawl through. No,
it was really fun, and a lot of what Dan said, it has come out in this. So it is a bit of a joint effort, and it was really nice because generally speaking, when my designs, it's just me by myself, in front of the computer or with a pen and paper or whatever. So it was really nice just to sit there and
anytime you want to brainstorm.
And he said to me, do it again if you want to. So I said, all right then.
It's a design brainstorm. It was marvellous.
It was really good. It was really good. So we will definitely do that again. Because Dan is really creative, but in a different way to me. He thinks in a different way. And I think that's brilliant, isn't it? To get different thinking minds together.
I think if you think in a similar way when it comes to things like that, that's where you can butt heads.
Yeah.
Because you might have an idea and I might be like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it wasn't like that at all. It was.
Well, no, for the exact reason that you said. We think in two completely opposite ways.
Yeah,
and so, sometimes, actually, I mean, really, any programme, any show that we make, it is a sort of coming together of our two minds. And that includes, Kay's always like, what did I do on, walking the wall or whatever? As I'm sure you've heard us say before, the initial idea for that type of concept of show was solely yours because it all came out of walking the Dales. And that really was completely your show idea. And it's all sort of then grown from that, because there's
Yeah.
elements of walking the Dales in
Yeah.
Rise and Fall of the Monasteries.
Yeah. So it is always a joint effort.
It hasn't been with patterns, but
Well,
perhaps
you say that, but actually, I do rely on Dan for obviously editing videos and filming the videos for tutorials.
that's support.
Well, not really, because I couldn't put out these patterns, that
All
need
that is
video
true,
tutorials.
but you let me be involved at the top. That's like being invited into the board
What do you mean,
meeting.
let me? I mean, we don't work like that, do we? I'm not precious in that.
No, you're
in
not
that
precious,
way.
but it's the first time you've ever said, "Oh, what would you do?"
Yeah.
And then we were off.
Well, I will definitely do it again because it was just so fun, really, and
Yeah.
it's just great to get another viewpoint on something.
Look, I am just about to get to the toe of my lovely sock. Oh, yes.
Oh, this is nice. I'm not going to
very
try and put that on the sock blocker again because that
no.
was a disaster.
That was a disaster. It's so fun. So many great elements. Loving the cabling, but then loving the sort of twisty, lacy business thingy in the middle.
It's an excellent description.
Yeah, I know.
It's just
You
brilliant.
can see
just
now.
Brilliant.
You get now a taste of that design meeting. Me with my excellent vocabulary. I really know what I'm talking about. It's shocking. But yeah, it's been it's just a fun sock
It
to
looks
knit.
beautiful. The colours are amazing.
Always lots to do, which is really, really nice. And yeah, I'm really genuinely now looking forward to getting the next one on the needles, because I feel like I've learnt a lot with this one, because that twist, the left and right twist, it's real. When I first started, it was really quite challenging, and now I feel really quite good about it. And also as well, there's nothing better than knitting something which you're going to see on someone's foot all the time. And I know that Bryony will love these.
She will love these. Yeah, I mean, I'll put my hand in to stretch out the pattern just so you can see what it looks like.
It's
So
just going to be... There's nothing better. I love seeing... I mean, it's like when Kay wears one of the garments that I've made.
Yeah, can you see?
The Samantha, definitely,
Isn't it
actually.
lovely?
You sort of feel really like you've accomplished... Well, like you've done what you set out to do, which is, keep one of your loved ones all warm and cosy.
I'm back into DPN knitting for my socks recently, and I've never used these square ones, so
Well,
I might have to get a pair.
We're, as we mentioned earlier, we're currently in the summer stitching.
Yeah.
But then October
Yes.
will be Sockaween,
Sockaween.
and you'll
yes.
be updating and putting out
Yeah.
are amazing. You're going to do a DPN version of the pattern which you put out last year.
Yes.
For Sockaween.
Yes.
So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, that's right. So
that's why you've been DPNing, isn't it?
Yes, I'm redoing the DPN series.
That we did
for
in 2016 with shaky camera and all the old ways.
Yeah, that's right. And I'll just be knitting through like a plain shorty sock, and there'll be a pattern included within the series as well for that. So because of that, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to knit a pair of socks on DPNs again. And of course, inevitably, what happens is you're like, I absolutely love this. So I've got 2 pairs on the go at the minute using DPNs, and I just love them.
I mean, it's horses for courses. You use whatever best works for you. But when I look at all the other ways of sock knitting, to me, this is the only way that makes sense.
It kind of feels whenever... I mean, I love Magic Loop, and I've used Magic Loop for a long time. But when you knit socks on double points, it kind of feels like you're more connected with the craft somehow. Because I'm sure that's how originally socks would have been hand knitted, using double points.
The research that I did said exactly that.
I'm sure my dad once told me that he remembers during the war when they had to go down into the shelters, his mum used to take a sock down with her,
right.
And he remembers the on the double points. I'm
Yeah.
sure my dad told me that one time.
Yeah.
But I think he said that she always used to use 4 needles. So,
right,
because I showed him one of my socks one time, and he's like, my mum always used 4 needles, which I think is quite common, isn't it? A lot of people.
It's a triangular.
Yeah, so they hold their stitches on 3 and knit with the 4th. But I've always, and Dan does as well, you hold your stitches on 4 needles and knit with the 5th.
Yeah.
I just find that you've got less tension between your joins because there's just not as much.
No.
You know, your needles have got a bit more room. And plus it means you can have even numbers of stitches on your needles. And
didn't you try it? I'm sure you
have
said
tried.
No, like in the last week or so.
Yeah, I did. Because, right, I was watching Paula, Stitched by Mrs. D, and she always knits her socks on 3 needles. But what she does is she holds the front half of her sock on 2 needles and then the back half all on 1 needle.
So that would make those changeovers each side quite taut.
Yeah, well, I and so in this case, so you would have 16, 16 and then 32 on the needles. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try that. So I just quickly rearranged my needles when I was knitting a sock. And I tried it. Paula, I could not do it. It was just way too... There was way too much tension. I didn't feel like I could turn my needles as much. But it's just interesting, isn't it? Because Paula's socks are always absolutely beautiful. She knits absolutely gorgeous socks. And she's obviously really comfortable using that method. But then someone else, you'd be like, oh, no, I can't do that.
It's like I say,
it's really interesting.
You find the technique that works for you and you go for it.
Yeah. I think I can say with much honesty that I don't think I will ever use 9-inch circulars because I have tried several times, right? It's just not for me. And I know a lot of people love the 9-inch circulars, but oh dear, no, definitely not for me. But yeah, everybody does their own thing and that's great. So the last thing I've got to show you today is another pair of socks using double points. Oh my goodness, these socks, I don't even know where to begin with how these socks look. So do you remember last time I was knitting these epic Oakworth socks with the minis from Dandelion and Dogwood? And I won't go over the whole story again as to why I'm re-knitting this pattern. You know, if you haven't seen the last episode, you can go and watch it. But I'm knitting another pair of Oakworth socks, which was a design that I created for Knitty You back in lockdown in 2020. So I'd never worn these socks, and I found them recently, and I put them on, and I was like, these are amazing. I need to knit another pair. So that's the sort of shortened version of what I said last time. And the only other yarn I had that was Dandelion and Dogwood was some minis from an advent calendar from a couple of years ago. So I thought, great, I'll use some of those minis and do some scrappy socks. So I've almost finished the pair. And if you remember from last time, I was saying how this yarn wasn't knitting up in a very pleasing way. And I'm happy to report that they continue to not knit up in a very pleasing way. I can't even describe the second sock, I'm just going to have to show you. But here's the first sock. So if you remember, I think I was sort of here the last time I showed you. I don't think I'd picked up for the heel, had I? But we'd got all of this business going on. I think you all know my feelings on this business. It's not my favourite when yarn does that. It looks a lot better once you go over the heel, you know, because that sort of breaks it up. So it doesn't look as bad. And then when I was sort of halfway down the foot, I then put in this next one, which initially I thought I quite liked. But then when Dan saw it, he said it just looked like chicken pox. So I said, oh, how can you say that? Because now that's all I can see is chicken pox. But I've got a finished sock and I've blocked it, and you know, I will wear them. I will absolutely wear them. So I used the same yarn on the toe here that I used up here. So these minis were from an Agatha Christie yarn advent calendar from like 2 Christmases ago, I think. And they all had names. And for example, the blue here that's doing the swirly business was Cyanide. And it, you know, it's amazing because it looks really pretty in the little ball, but it just does not knit up how you expect it to knit up. So yeah, we've got, so this one I think was Miss Marple. So we've got Miss Marple for the cuff and the toe. This was Cyanide. This one, I'm not sure what this one was, but it's obviously like a speckledy, very, very heavily speckledy. And the speckles, to me, it looks more like it's been created with a liquid rather than a direct powder speckle, if you know what I mean. Do you know when I do my dyeing of speckles, you see that I use the actual dry powder, the dye powder. This doesn't look like that. It somehow looks like it's more of a liquid, but I don't know. I'm just surmising, I'm just guessing. So that's the first sock, and I'm actually not far off finished the second sock. This one has knit up even more completely bizarrely, and I'm at a loss really as to what to say about this, but I'll show you. So here we go, and I'm using Knit Pick Sunstruck DPNs, which are lovely. So here we go, look. I'm kind of in awe about how something can knit up like this. And obviously up here we've got, I mean, if you look at the top of the sock, it's difficult to show you, but basically if you look at the top of the sock, can you see all the massive sort of blob of pink? And then on the back you get all the blue. But on the side you can see it does a kind of, I don't even know how to describe it really. You know, and normally, you all know that normally this is not my thing, how yarn knits up. And obviously this yarn, if you were knitting something different, so say you were knitting a shawl or whatever, you know, a larger garment, it's not going to knit up like this. It could well knit up completely differently, and, well, it would in a shawl, wouldn't it? It would knit up completely differently. But everybody dyes yarn differently, and I'm certainly not criticising anything. I'm just sort of surprised, I guess, that it knits up like it knits up in socks, because for me, with a yarn advent calendar, I think it's quite common for people to knit socks using yarn advent calendars, I would say. You know, even with the leftovers maybe, you might have knit something big with most of it, but you might have some left over and you might want to make some scrappy socks. And I just don't think it does the colours justice. For example, this one here was Death on the Nile, the blue and the pink. And it looks so beautiful in the wound up in the little ball. It just looks gorgeous. And then when you knit it up, it looks like that. So I like I said, just don't think it does it justice. However, I have purchased a couple of sock sets over the last couple of weeks, and I'm going to show you those in Endy Bits. And I mean, they look like they're dyed completely differently to how the minis have been dyed. So I'm sure they will knit up differently. But yeah, Oakworth Socks almost finished. I'm sure I'll have these done for next time, and I'm absolutely loving the double points. I love these wooden ones, the Sunstruck. I think this might be the only pair I've got. I need to look and see if I've got another pair. I'm not keen on the dark coloured wood, you know, like I've got a pair that's Knit Pro. Is it, the harmonies are like a sort of deep reddish colour, aren't they, with other colours in, and then I've got a blue version of that, but they're just a bit too dark for me these days. I prefer a lighter needle. I can see everything much more clearly. So yeah, almost done with my Oakworth socks.
Cool. Right, it's time for another Rise and Fall of the Monasteries. Can you believe we're up to episode 6?
Yes.
Now, everything that has gone before, you sort of need to forget it, because today there's no rule of St. Benedict.
No.
It's time for the rule of St. Augustine. Yes. And we're going to meet a brand new monastic order. And they're not actually monks. They're canons.
Canons.
And there's a huge surprise in store, but that's not coming until part 2. So without further ado, let's enjoy part 1 of the brand new episode of the Rise and Fall of the Monasteries. "1,500 years ago, a way of life arrived in Europe that shaped the development of the world we live in today.
healthcare and education are just two of the many innovations pioneered by the men and women of the monasteries. From the height of their powers at the time of the Normans to their total destruction at the hands of a tyrant king and a cruel emperor. This is one of the most epic stories the world has got to tell, and whilst their way of life may have virtually disappeared, everywhere you look across Europe, you'll find ruined monasteries, echoes of their fascinating existence. And in this series, I'm going to take you to some of my absolute favourites. This is going to be quite an adventure. Welcome to the rise and fall of the monasteries. Welcome back everyone to the rise and fall of the monasteries. You join me on a tiny railway bridge over Sandbeck. We've travelled 40 miles southwest of Finkel and Weardale, and we're back in my hometown of Yorkshire. We're just downstream from the medieval town of Richmond and the absolutely marvellous Richmond Castle. And we're also just upstream from one of the biggest military garrisons in all of Great Britain, and that's Catterick. Now, I'm particularly excited today because I'm stood on a disused railway track. This branch line opened up in 1846 and it proved to be particularly popular. And it's no surprise because you've just got everything: an absolutely spectacular river, a gorgeous destination, and lush Yorkshire countryside. If you are British, the name Beeching will send a shiver down your spine, because it was Richard Beeching who was challenged in the 1960s to find a way of turning what was a crippled industry, the railways, into something that could still support itself and continue. And to do that, he decided that the best thing to do was to shut 55% of the tracks, which in turn meant loads of railway stations were closed. This line, though, it stayed open. And what was it that drew people here? Why was it that this line was still seen as profitable? Well, it was, of course, history and a glorious Yorkshire destination. Without that castle, we would not be here today, because it was a man called Raould who was the constable of Richmond Castle. He was effectively the man in charge. He was permanently there. Whilst the Lord may be away, the constable would always remain and look after the surrounding lands. And it was Raould who decided to gift 200 acres of land and provide funds to help build the destination that we're en route to. And that destination is the Abbey of St Agatha, built around 1152 AD. And whilst a new monastery was being built, as it turned out, men and women had been collecting in this area for generations to go out into the communities to preach. Now, in this series, we've learnt about an awful lot of different monastic orders, from the Cistercians to the Saviniacs, and then last time, the Benedictines. Now, they all lived by the rule of St Benedict. Now, we learnt all about St Benedict in episode 4. He was the man who wrote the rule which so many monastic houses live by. The funny thing is, though, here they lived by a different rule. Now, the rule of St Benedict was written in 530 AD, and the rule that governed the house that we're going to visit today was actually written over 100 years before that by a man known today as St Augustine. Who was this St Augustine, and what made his words so important? Let's find out. Our journey begins not far from the Great Sahara Desert, in the town of Tagaste, Algeria. It was here on the 13th of November 354 AD that Augustine was born. Baptized Aurelius Augustinus, he was born to Roman parents living on the fringes of the empire. They managed to acquire a first-class education for Augustine, who became a passionate teacher of rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking or writing. Augustine's star was on the rise, and at the age of 28, he headed to Italy to make his career. He landed the plum appointment as Imperial Professor of Rhetoric here in Milan. But after 2 years, Augustine resigned. Disillusioned with life, he returned home to Algeria. After years of soul-searching, aged 36, Augustine became a junior clergyman in the ancient city of Hippo, the modern-day city of Annaba. Born a believer in then the new religion of Christianity, he had finally found his calling. His numerous written works as Christianity took its first steps in the 4th century laid the foundation for much of medieval and modern Christian thought. Augustine is extraordinary for what he wrote. More than 5 million words of his writings survive, all displaying the strength, sharpness of mind and raw power to attract and hold the attention of readers, both in his day and most astonishingly in ours as well. What's so fascinating about St Augustine is he would never know the impact he would have on the modern world, because it all came in the years that followed his death. It was all thanks to the words that he wrote and the many books that he produced. And one of his most famous, The Rule of St Augustine, I'm delighted to say I've got my copy with me today, and we'll hear some of his words later on in the episode. Now, just like St Benedict, St Augustine inspired men and women to follow his rule. And as St Benedict inspired the Benedictines, St Augustine inspired the Augustinians. And Martin Luther, a man that we'll come to know well in this series, was an Augustinian himself. Now, I mentioned there that St Augustine's words inspired men and women, and that is a fact. For every abbey ruled by an abbot, there was one ruled by an abbess, or a priory ruled by a prior. If it was a ladies' monastery, it was a prioress. It's actually agreed by historians that in the Middle Ages, Christianity was much more welcoming, in fact, more welcoming than at any other time in its history, to women. Some countries, though, were more inclusive than others. Germany, for example, in this period around about 1250, had 500 monastic houses solely for women. That would have contained between 25 and 30,000 nuns. Now, most female monastic houses were actually quite small, so unfortunately there's not very many left of them in the country. The nearest one actually to here would have been Richmond. There was Richmond Abbey that was home to some Benedictine nuns, but unfortunately when the monasteries were dissolved it was completely lost, and its old site has been swallowed up by the town of Richmond. The nearest one that's working actually to here is Stanbrook Abbey. And that is actually, I think that's about 3 miles from Byland Abbey, which we visited in episode 3. But the house that we're en route to visit today was actually part of the Premonstratensian order. And there's something very special about them. Much like the Cistercians of Rievaulx Abbey, the Premonstratensians were formed in northern France in 1120 AD. Whilst they were largely influenced by Cistercian ideals, their founder wanted to create an order which inspired everyone, not just the members of the order. So Premonstratensians are not monks living a religious life alone, but canons regular. Whilst they live in an abbey, as we will see, their work involves preaching within their community. They frequently serve in parishes close to their abbeys. Now, you may wonder why I'm talking in the present tense. Well, that's because the Premonstratensians, much like the Cistercians and the Benedictines, they still exist to this day. Whilst men like Martin Luther and also Henry VIII, of course, did their best to reform or even get rid of so many of these monastic houses, their work still continues. But way back in 1152 AD, the Premonstratensians were a brand new religious order, just springing out into what was, as we know now, the golden age of monastery building. These canons were setting up their religious houses and then venturing out into the surrounding countryside. They were very much the face of this new Christian religion to the common man and woman who was now starting to experience it. I think it's fair to say that anywhere that you went in medieval England, the landscape that you were walking through would have been shaped by the nearest, the local monastic house, whether it be the roadways or the pathways or the parkland or the boundaries to villages, all of which had either been built by or influenced by the local religious house. What made things different, and certainly very different to the Benedictines that we met at Finkel, was that the men here at Easby were also going out into the community and working with the common man and woman. They must have been an absolutely integral part to society. This was a time when everybody went to church. And if you didn't go on specific days, you could be fined or even imprisoned. Births, marriages, deaths, they were all overseen by the canons of Easby Abbey. If you think about it, this was a superb piece of public relations by Raould, the constable at the nearby Richmond Castle. So what does the place look like where these canons came from? What was their home like to live in? I think we should go explore the best preserved pre-Monstratensian abbey in all of England. Welcome everyone to the infirmary here at Easby Abbey. The buildings that I'm walking through here would once have been the Abbey's and the surrounding community's hospital. Now, as we've discovered in this series already, the care that was given out by middle-aged doctors was rudimentary, to say the least. A mere infection could kill you, but it's all perspective, isn't it? Because in Middle-Age times, the care that you would have received here would have been absolutely cutting edge. Now, the really interesting thing is, with the infirmary, is it wasn't just a place to take care of the sick, but it also would have been a place which people may have retired to. Those are people who maybe needed a little bit of help and support in their old age. Now, over the course of this episode, if you think that this place looks slightly familiar, you'd be right. Because 6 months ago, at the height of winter, we called in here to learn the layout of a monastery. I promised you we'd be back, and here we are. Now, we've already learnt so much about the canons who lived here at Easby Abbey, but there are so many secrets I can't wait to share with you. And I must say, it's also absolutely wonderful to be back here with the flowers in bloom.
Whilst Easby Abbey was home to canons, not monks, the only difference really was that the men who lived here all went beyond the boundaries of the abbey to work within their local communities. It was a canon's job to spread the word of Christianity to everyone.
The pre-Monstratensian order, though, was heavily influenced by the Cistercians. And so, whilst their canons were venturing out into the parishes around their abbey to support the work that was being done there, the ones left in the abbey would have continued on life very much as we've seen at Revo and Byland and Jervo. And so at the centre of that life, there was still the abbot. And the place where the business of the abbey was done, where the important decisions were made, was right here in Easby Abbey Chapter House.
For 384 years, every day this room was filled with the machinations of abbey life. With the abbot sat at the head of the room under the great window, flanked by his prior, his second in command, the whole community would meet here to discuss the business of their estates.
Sometimes that business might be of the most serious nature. In 1482, for example, John Nym was brought here. He was a member of the community, one of the canons. He'd been accused of having an affair with a local widow. She was called Elizabeth Wales, and they'd actually met when John had presided over Elizabeth Wales' husband's funeral. So she was a widow, she was clearly very upset, and he would have gone out of his way, wouldn't he, to console her? Well, the community thought that there was something not right about that. And so they accused him of having an affair. And if it had been proved, if he'd been proven guilty, it would have been catastrophic for him, because he would have been cast out from the Premonstratensian order and really would have been an outcast. Luckily for John, he was proven innocent, and every cloud has a silver lining, because that trial enabled him to get noticed within the community here at Easby. And in the years following, he was actually promoted to second in command. He became prior. Now, the chapter house is of course called the chapter house because every meeting finished with a reading from a chapter. Now, in every abbey we visited so far, it was a chapter from the Book of St Benedict, because that was the order's founding document. Here, though, at Easby Abbey, it was of course the Book of St Augustine. And I'd now like to read to you one of my favourite little snippets from the Rule of St Augustine.
Let there be no contention among you, or at least, if there is, let it be put to bed quickly. If not, anger will grow into hatred and render the soul guilty of murder. Whoever wounds another by offensive language or by wishing evil should be mindful of their own actions and must make satisfaction as soon as possible. For one who is often tempted to anger, but speedily asks pardon of the one who has been injured, is better than one not so moved to anger and yet less inclined to pardon. After all, the measure of love is to love without measure.
Augustine's words were originally written in Latin, and what inspirational words they were. Now we're actually en route to the refectory, which lies off this rather special cloister. And why do I say it's special? Well, it's because I've visited a lot of cloisters in my time, and I can tell you that this is the only one that isn't square. Take a look at this. I think that's what you would call trapezoidal, isn't it? Now, there's a very special reason for the shape of this cloister, and that's because Easby Abbey is actually built on the site of an Anglo-Saxon minster dating from the time of St Hilda herself. Whilst that's very exciting, and more about that later on in the show, right now I'm very excited to show you this refectory. Oh my goodness, this is such a gorgeous space. You have to remember what we saw at Finkel. If you recall, there was a dark undercroft underneath. That was the day room. It would have been exactly the same here. And in a long disappeared second floor above, that was where the monks ate. Now, the difference between here and Finkel is this space is so much more ornate. Just take a look at this.
Archaeological investigation tell us that the present refectory was built around 1250 AD. A problem though arose from the initial design. This north wall mirrored the south wall, and you might notice it's devoid of windows. This would have made the space unbelievably dark, so a change was made. Within 20 or 30 years, this south wall was knocked down and rebuilt, featuring the huge windows that we see today. They even enlarged the windows in the undercroft, but this created a problem.
Would you believe it? The windows which they put in on the south side were too big, and it's sort of cool to see how you see there, how that vaulting, it just doesn't fit, so they've had to extend it over the top. They're stilted, they've put extra little bits on to get the vaulting over. It's a very interesting juxtaposition of architectural features. Now, there's one more little secret to discover before we leave the refectory here at Easby, and that is, we've seen in so many places now that whilst the monks, canons here of course, whilst they ate, they did so in silence, but they were read to from a pulpit.
And here it is. This is the pulpit. Now, it was reached via a staircase inside the wall. And you might wonder, where did this tradition begin? Well, it was with the rule of St Augustine. He wrote, "When you are at table, be attentive, without noise or contention, until you rise from your meal. Let not your mouth take meat, but let your hearing at that time receive the word of God."
As we leave the refectory, we're going to make our way to one of the ancillary buildings, which I promised I'd show you as the series went on. We've already seen so many, but this is one of my favourites, and there's a little hint in the architecture that we're getting close to something special. It's actually the corbels supporting the vaulting which would have held the ceiling above. Just take a look at these.
We're looking at the stonework which once protruded upwards to support a barrel-vaulted ceiling. Now, do you see those figures carved into the stonework? They're hard to spot, but there are heads and shoulders there. Nothing like this appears anywhere else in the abbey. In fact, I can't recall ever seeing ornate stonework like that in an abbey undercroft anywhere. They were put there for one reason: to impress guests.
Anyone actually using this staircase would have got an amazing view of those ornate corbels. And a lot of people use this staircase because we're making our way to the abbey's guest accommodation. And the staircase leads here to the guest accommodation. Now, all abbeys that we've visited so far, and all we'll visit later on in the series, has guest accommodation as well, and some of them, at the bigger abbeys, the guest accommodation is quite palatial. When we come back in part 2, we'll be taking a closer look at this, going for a tour through the church, and I can't wait to show you the secret that Easby has in store for us. I'll see you later on in the show.
Whoa! Can you believe it? They had guest houses.
How cool is that? Wouldn't you like to have gone?
I know. We're going to take a close look at that guest house when we get back, because whilst that bed I just walked into is ruined, there's another part of it, the part where the actual bedroom was, that's actually still got walls and you can still see quite a bit of it. But what about those corbels?
Corbels.
I know.
That's a lovely word, isn't it? Corbels.
And
Where that comes from.
I think what's so lovely is seeing those after we obviously walked through the undercroft in Finkel, and we could see, the corbels and then it rising up and supporting the barrel vaults. So we know what was coming up off that and the type of ceiling that would have been that would have been supporting. But just fascinating for me, to see it there in person. You can see there on those corbels that there's clearly heads and shoulders appearing underneath. It's sort of like they're holding up, a bit like in Despicable Me, where he's walking down to go to see the bank manager.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a guy holding up like, I can't remember what it is. It's like a pillar or something.
Yeah.
And then slowly but surely it's like crushing him under the weight of his loan. But yeah, just what, such a different place to anywhere else. I mean, what about the trapezoidal? There's a big word.
That's
cloister.
A very mathematically big word,
I know.
isn't it?
I know.
Yeah.
And the surprise is coming later on in the show in part 2, and it's a bit of a whopper. Wait till you see. Right now, though, it's time for a very special Kay Jones, what's off your needles?
Right, well, I'm going to start with this, actually.
Yes.
The first thing I've got off my sewing needle
Yes.
is a bag. Because, as we mentioned earlier...
What's so wonderful is they actually saw the little snippet.
Oh, yeah.
So it was when you just finished teaching everyone how to do the bunting.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah, everybody's underway with the cross-stitch section of our Summer of Stitching now. And once the cross-stitch is completed, we are then going to make it into a bag. And I've done all that already. And look, so here's the cross-stitch that you saw that little snippet of. And it's been sewn into this gorgeous...
It's really, really nice.
into this gorgeous project bag. So the fabric I've used, this one here is kind of like one of the main ones from the range. Isn't it lovely?
Not the range.
Not the shop, the range.
No.
I can't imagine the shop, the range, sells Liberty fabric. No, don't go looking for Liberty in the range shop.
you're not going to find.
You know, if you're in a different country, that'll mean nothing to you. But the range is like a shop, like a discount.
It's huge.
Massive. It's absolutely ginormous. Lots of sort of homewares and
Always.
random things.
I think 12 months a year they sell Christmas decorations.
Yeah, I think there's a cafe in there.
Yeah,
as
there
well.
is. Yeah.
In the one that we've got, there's a cafe,
I've not
and
been
they have
in
like
it,
a whole big gardening section. And basically, if you need something and you want to buy it cheap,
The last time we went in,
Go
they
to
had
the range.
canoes.
they did. Was it canoes or was it surfboards?
Maybe it was surf.
I think it was surfboards.
Oh, okay. That's different.
But surfboards?
Yeah, a canoe is even more specialist, isn't it?
Yeah, a canoe is even more.
I can't believe I'm
bizarre.
justifying them selling surfboards.
Well, no, I mean, surfboards, really?
Bonkers.
Yeah, anyway, this fabric is not from the range. It's from Liberty. It's Liberty quilting cotton. It's not the Tana lawn, it's the quilting cotton. And the actual fabric range is called Riviera, I believe it was. And this is sort of one of the main prints. But all of these are from that same range. And then inside we've got this gorgeous floral, very typically Liberty, isn't it? But really, really pretty.
You just did this last week, didn't you?
I sewed this up last week and we filmed it, and it was a long day.
It was. So
It was a long day.
very exciting because, as Kay's already said, the tutorial series where she teaches you how
Yeah.
to do all of this starts, I think, on the 4th of July properly.
Yeah.
The beginner bit's gone out, so you can join her and she'll teach you how to do all of this. And then once that 4-part series is finished, she'll then teach you how to do all of this.
Yes, how
It's
to
marvellous.
make bag.
9 marvellous episodes.
Yes, it's quite intense.
Yes, it's cool.
Well, not intense
It's
is
not
the
intense
wrong
at
word.
all. It's perfect.
Thorough,
Yes.
I would say is the word. So the other two things I've got off my needles are
This is it.
Fairground Socks. So here is the first pair. You've seen these before.
I wish Joe McDonald was here because she could sing This Is the Moment.
We can't talk about Jane all the time.
No, we got in trouble before for this.
Somebody might know her and they could go and tell her, couldn't they? And she might have us.
Why?
I don't know.
It's called an opinion. We're not actually criticising. We're not being
No,
directly.
we watch her all the time. We find her highly entertaining.
Yes. Yeah.
Here are one pair of Fairground Socks. So this yarn is from Fab Funky Fibres in the UK, and the colourway is Big Top, which was just perfect for the theme. You know, when I came up with the name, the image that I got in my head of a fairground is partly from a Waltons episode where there was a fairground in town, and partly from just that kind of old-fashioned image. Downton was another one that had a fairground that made me think of this. The ones that have like carousels with the beautifully painted horses, and there's helter-skelters and, you know, coconut shies, those kinds of fairgrounds. Not Blackpool Pleasure Beach, not that kind of a place. So that's more sort of vintage feel. So these are the first pair, looking absolutely gorgeous. And I used, like I said, Fab Funky Fibres, and then the cuff seals and toes were Cascade Heritage in tutu. And I think that colour goes really well. It made me think of Candy Floss at a fair. Beautiful. And these ones, as you can see, I've got a heel flap and a turn, and I've used a square heel turn because that minimises the disruption to the stripes. And I think really there's only the sort of pink one. Is it the pink one on these? Yeah, the pink one that's sort of slightly disrupted, and then it just looks fine from then on. And then the other pair that I finished. So yeah, this pattern is out now. You can go and purchase the pattern, and within the pattern, as I've said before, there's 2 different heels, and I've included a video tutorial for how to knit the butterfly heel. There's full written instructions in the pattern, but I know a lot of people like a visual image when they're maybe doing something new if you've not done it before. So I've included a tutorial in the pattern as well, and I've used a thicker yarn so that it really shows up nice and clearly exactly what you've got to do.
And of course, you don't just have to use self-striping. You could use.
You can make a scrappy version. Like I said, I'm going to show you that next time. And one of my test knitters, lovely Alison, she knit up her sample super quick with self-striping, and she said, oh, I might try just a plain yarn. I said, oh yeah, go for it. I'll see what it looks like. And she sent me a picture. She knit it in like a day. She's like, oh, I couldn't stop. And it looked fantastic. So in a plain yarn, it also looks really, really beautiful. So here we go with the other pair. Look at these. So this is another Freckled Whimsy yarn, and this one's called Queen of Hearts. And these are going to be for Bryony, because she saw Queen of Hearts as a reference from Once Upon a Time. So she's like, oh yeah, she loves purple. So these are going to be for her. So the cuffs, heels and toes for this pair, I used a 20 gram mini from, I think it was Botanical Yarn, but I just thought the colour matched really well. And I did have a little nugget left. I think people often say, is 20 grams enough for cuffs, heels and toes? I find that it's enough for a 64 stitch or a 56 stitch, obviously because that's smaller. But I think if you were knitting the 72 stitch size, I think you will probably need a bit more than 20 grams for cuffs, heels and toes. And also if you knit a really long cuff, then you might also need a little bit more. But I have put details of that in the pattern as well. So 2 gorgeous pairs of Fairground Socks. So you can go ahead and purchase the pattern on Ravelry or Lovecrafts.
Cool.
It's available now.
What a wonderful What's Off Your Needles.
Yes.
And to continue the wonderfulness, it's time for us to return to the rise and fall of the monasteries and an epic surprise.
Welcome back, everyone, to the rise and fall of the monasteries. We are, of course, exploring the wonderful Easby Abbey. And when you left me, we'd made our way here to the guest hall. Now, this actually sheds a really interesting light on life in the Middle Ages, because if I took you back in time to the Middle Ages and we were travelling across the country, we could knock on the door of anyone, anywhere, and they would most probably happily welcome us in and give us a bed for the night, because that was seen as an ultimate work of charity, and it would do well for you in the next life, shall we say. But we're, of course, in an abbey, and they lived by a higher standard, specifically the book of Matthew, chapter 35, verse 25. I was a stranger and you took me in. And here at Easby Abbey, and in fact all abbeys, you would find tremendous guest accommodation, and we're stood in exactly that. This is the guest hall. Now, not much remains, but this was once a very grand building indeed, and you can very clearly see the outline in the ground as we sort of walk through this space. And the beginning of this space actually starts right up here.
We're walking through the guests' hall. This would have looked very much like Abbot Roger of Bylan's Undercroft, which we visited in episode 3 of this series. Central pillars would have held up an ornate vaulted ceiling above, with fireplaces set into the walls each side to provide ample warmth. This was high-quality living accommodation.
As we leave the guest hall behind, it's just a short walk through this absolutely wonderful corridor into what would have been a just as grand guest's bedroom and private quarters.
After climbing a short staircase to a floor above, we would have arrived in our private quarters, fit for the most discerning of travellers. Not all were so lucky though. How you were housed very much was governed on how you arrived. If you arrived on horseback, you'd be offered a night here in the guest house. But if you arrived on foot, you'd be offered a bed in the dormitory with the rest of the Abbey community.
No money changed hands for the offer of this kindness. And I've read countless times in history books over the years of journeys taken the length and breadth of the country where you just rocked up at anyone's house, knocked on the door, and they were quite happy to let you in. It makes you assess the Middle Ages, a time that is often thought of as barbaric. And, when you learn something like this, you realise that it perhaps wasn't quite what we think it was. And it also makes you realise that quite often our assessment of history is just incorrect. Can you imagine today if you turned up in a new town and knocked on someone's door and said, "Can I have a bed for the night and some tea?" They'd look at you like you were crazy. And in medieval times, even if you ended up in the dormitory, it was still pretty special. And this is it, Easby Abbey Dormitory. And it is exactly as you would imagine. On the second floor, so one floor above here, there was a large space with lots of hay beds with woolen sheets. Now, the biggest Easby ever got was 22 cannons, so it always would have been quite spacious. And in later years, wooden panelling was actually introduced. You can actually see in the walls where those panels slotted in. That was to give each cannon a little bit of privacy. One thing, though, was constant. At 2 a.m. every morning, the bell would ring and the cannons would make their way down the night stairs to the first service of the day, matins. To do that, they would first dress in their dormitory above, and then they would make their way down this staircase behind me. Now, the decoration on this staircase is original, so it's been there since this place was built. And it's just fascinating and tantalising, I think, that we know that every canon who ever lived here and worked out in their community would have walked underneath that archway. So John Nym, for example, would have known that staircase well, the canon that we met earlier on in the episode. Now, on making their way down this staircase, they would make their way across the cloister and into the church for their service. Welcome everyone to the west end of the nave. Now, not much remains of this building, but it once would have looked absolutely spectacular, and we've actually seen things very similar to it earlier on in the series. It was built in a Romanesque style and so would have resembled very much what we saw when we visited Revo. And this was, of course, once the main entrance into the church. There was no lay community at Easby Abbey, so this part of the church would have been open. There would have been no pews, just huge columns supporting a stunning ceiling with stained glass glinting from above. This would have been used for processions on the most sacred of religious occasions. As we leave the nave behind, we head towards the transepts. But here at Easby, a private chapel has been built into the southern wall of the church.
Archaeologists believe this was the abbot's private chapel. The plinth which remains at its eastern end was once topped with an altar.
As we leave the nave and the transepts behind, we make our way into another of those ancillary buildings we've been discovering in this series. This was a space which all abbeys had, and it was called a sacristy. Now, canons and monks needed special vestments, special clothes, and also special chalices and often spoons to use during their services held in the choir, and they stored them here in their sacristy. So prior to a service, they would come in, they would collect what they would need, they would put on their vestments, and then they would make their way back out into the church for their service. We end our tour of the church at the most sacred part. This was the presbytery. It was the place where all the really important services took place, and it also ended up being a place of burial for all the abbey's most important patrons. Here at Easby, that was the Scroop family. Now, they were actually related to someone we've already met in this series. Do you remember Henry Fitzhugh, the man who we saw an effigy of on the floor when we visited Jervois Abbey? Well, the Scroop family were related to him.
These two wall niches once housed the tombs of Henry Fitzhugh's brothers-in-law, Geoffrey and Henry Scroop.
It's thought that they were removed when the abbey was dissolved in 1536, but when archaeologists were first exploring and excavating Easby back in the 19th century, human bones and rubble were found in those niches, so who knows? Now, you would have thought the wonders of Easby would be coming to an end. But what of that minster I mentioned earlier on in the episode? Why was the cloister a strange shape? And in fact, why was an abbey built here at all? Well, the answer to that question lies ahead of me, and it's surprisingly simple and beautiful. There was actually an Anglo-Saxon church here since the 7th century. It's most probable that this was one of the sites opened up after Hilda's Great Synod that we covered in episode 1. What we know for certain is that there was a community of priests living here, based in one central church.
That church was actually known as a minster. It was most probably on or very near to this site. Many still remain, like the one we visited at York in episode 1. Minsters were early religious communities formed in Anglo-Saxon times, which featured lots of priests living together, then heading out into their local community to spread the word of Christianity.
If you think that sounds a little bit like what the Premonstratensians were doing, from their abbey built in 1150, some 350, maybe 400 years later, you'd be absolutely right. It turns out that the whole reason why Raoul decided to provide the land and the money to build that abbey was so that the community which was already based here could continue on. It was a way of breathing new life into the work that had already been done here. And like I say, in 1150 AD, when that was built, the minster that was already here had been here for most probably 350 years. The minster that was here has gone, and this building has replaced it. Now that, it's sad in one sense, but it's also amazing in another, because this building was built in 1250 AD, and 1250 is exactly when that extension to the refectory went in. And this was part of that. They were all one. So it's absolutely certain that the men who built this, still with its roof on, still in use, were the same men who did the extensions over at Easby Abbey. But what exactly is this if it's not a minster? Well, it's a parish church. And you might be wondering, what does parish mean? Well, parish is actually taken from the Latin word parochia, and parochia means Christian community. And when St Hilda took the actions that she did that we covered in episode 1 at the Synod of Whitby, the country was split up into parishes, and in each parish there was a church, and that church was called the parish church.
This parish church would have been manned by one of the canons from the abbey next door. We visited so many wonderful places so far this series. I have to say it's tremendous to see one still in use. Now, this church needed funding. It was built by the local lord, but it required people to run it. So everyone within the parish paid a weekly tithe or tax to keep their local church afloat.
Historians have got no idea how parishes were actually laid out, because each one of them is a completely different size and a completely different shape. But what's absolutely fascinating about them is the majority of people who live in England today now live in county councils which were formed by their parishes. We're now inside St Agatha's Church. It's the first time I've ever been in here, and it's astounding, to be honest. There's so much historical content. I'll pick out some of the best bits. Now, if I took you back in time and I took you to church before Henry VIII's great change, before the advent of the Church of England, the experience was really quite different to what it is today. It was very much a feast for the eyes as well as the ears, from the vestments worn to the walls. The walls were richly adorned with just the most amazing paintings. We'll take a little look at that in just a moment. But also, there was no seats. You stood, unless, of course, you were old or infirm. And then something was made available to you, and it was this down here. It's the first time I've ever seen one of these.
That ledge you can see was designed specifically for the old and infirm to sit on during services. It's rudimentary, but I suppose it does the job.
Also, as well, you may have noticed, as we were taking a little look at that ledge, there is a 7th century font. So whilst this church was built in 1250 by stonemasons who worked on the abbey, this font is original. This probably was here at the time of the original minster from maybe 700 AD. It's just amazingly decorated. It's surprising, really. I don't know why you think when something is... I mean, just stop for a moment to consider that there that we're looking at is at least 300 years older than the abbey that we've just walked around. And I don't know why I expected it to be so much more rudimentary. I mean, it's just beautiful. The biggest change that you would notice, though, are the walls. Because in modern day churches, they just aren't like this. But in the Middle Ages, the walls were richly decorated with wall paintings. Now, these here at St Agatha's are some of the most complete and best in England. And I've never seen them before, and let me tell you, they are utterly spectacular. The reformers that would arrive around about 1540, when the Church of England was born, despised richly painted walls. And they covered them over, they whitewashed them completely. And they were lost for 400 years until someone noticed something. I think it's the 19th century, the early 19th century, someone noticed something appearing from behind the lime wash and they started to peel it off. My goodness, can you imagine how wonderful it must have been seeing all those just gorgeous paintings appearing? There's one final little hint of what went before that we must take a look at before we leave St Agatha's Church.
This is a replica of the Easby cross. It dates from around 750 AD and it probably once stood outside of the minster, which stood once on this site. It's carved with Celtic interlace patterns on the sides and biblical scenes on the front and rear faces. Whilst it's sad in a way that this is a replica, you can go see the original yourself. This object has such national importance that it's now preserved and available to view at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London.
What I love so much about St Agatha's Church is you would never guess about the treasures that lie within. And that's probably the reason why I've been here 4 or 5 times before and never gone in the church. What was I thinking? And what's so wonderful about what we've seen in that church is that is exactly how it was in 1250. And it's the type of history which I just adore. It's real, it's tangible, you can go up and touch it. And it helps us get so much closer to the canons who lived in Easby Abbey and the parishioners who came here to pray.
And so our story of Easby Abbey comes to an end. A truly beautiful place which started life as an Anglo-Saxon minster, which became an abbey inspired by St Augustine, and continues to this day as a parish church.
What a spectacular legacy St Augustine has left behind, just here at Easby, because his inspirational words, written thousands of miles from here, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, inspired not just the men who lived and worked here, but to this day inspire the parishioners who continue to pray at Easby Church. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time for more Rise and Fall of the Monasteries.
What an episode! Oh my goodness, that took my breath away. Seeing those walls in that church.
Wasn't it amazing?
Been there lots of times. I've never ever in my life, all the places I've ever visited across the whole country, I have never seen medieval wall paintings like that before. And Kay said after she watched it that thank goodness they had been whitewashed over, because if they hadn't, they probably wouldn't look like what they look like now. And that's exactly right, because they would have been messed with, you know, maybe enhanced, maybe touched up. And those just haven't been messed with at all. They haven't been touched because they were found at the sort of point in history where we started to understand that the thing to do is to preserve, not to, you know, enhance.
Not to make it look new.
Yes, yeah.
Just preserve what's there.
It is the most spectacular space. And also as well, to find out, it's like, you know, we started at a minster. And now we know, of course, what a minster is. It was one of those original churches where there was lots of religious people based in one place and then going out into their community, spread the word of Christianity. So York Minster, Lincoln was also a minster back in the day. And to find out that there was a minster there outside, you know, tiny Richmond, and also sort of lovely to think that that building, you know, it's sad that it's gone, But we saw the cross, didn't we? And that cross is there in London for us all, to go see in the Victoria and Albert Museum.
Amazing. You might have seen it if you've been in there.
Absolutely, you might have done. So, end to a brilliant episode. We're now very much on the home straight.
And I've got to just say that the bit of information you read out from the Rule of St. Augustine, was it?
Yes.
I mean, is that not the kind of wisest thing? And so, I just find it amazing that it was written all that time ago, hundreds of years ago.
Well,
How many hundreds of years?
Well, it's more than hundreds. 345 AD he wrote it.
Right.
Around
And
there.
it's like completely relevant listening to it now.
Yeah.
I just find that mind-blowing. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, it is, absolutely is. So that's the end of another Rise and Fall of the Monasteries.
Fabulous. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure. Next time, Kay is back with the next My Favourite Blanket, and it is a stunning colourway. Yes. Oh my goodness.
I've been practising it, and it's super duper and
Wait till you see it.
in your face summer. I have embraced it on this occasion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now it's time for the Endy Bits.
Endy Bits.
2 skeins of yarn.
I purchased a couple of skeins of yarn. I mentioned to you earlier, I got a couple of sock sets from Dandelion and Dogwood because of my Oakwood sock obsession, and it was this yarn that I used when I first knit them up in, when was it, 2020. So I went and purchased a couple of sock sets, and I got, now, these are the 2 sock sets. They're really, really pretty. But unfortunately, the sticker is missing off the back with all the yarn details, which is a bit of a shame. So I do know what the colourway names are because I've got a print of my order. So I've just got to remember which is which, and I'm pretty sure this one, so the one with the brown and the pink minis, and it's got some brown and blue over here, and then it's like a tangerine with some speckles, really, really pretty. This one is Ghost Stories and S'mores by the Campfire. And I think this was produced specifically with the Summer Sock Camp from Crazy Sock Lady in mind. I just love the colours. And you get 2 minis, which is really nice. So I haven't got the yarn details on here. I'm pretty sure it's an 80-20. It's a 2-ply high twist, but I can't remember what the yardage was. But she does detail it on her website. But what I'll do, I didn't want to scribble on the back of here till I showed you. I didn't want it to look messy. So I'll write on the back of here the name of the colourways just so that I know when I come to knit them up. And then the other one, this one, which is it's pinks, and there's like a limey, goldeny colour, and then like a aqua, which is really, really pretty. This one is Carousel. So I got this one because it made me think of Fairground Socks, because it's called Carousel. And it is those kind of pretty horse colours, isn't it, from a carousel? I'm presuming that's where all the colours come from. So I don't know how these are going to knit up, but I will find out at some point. I wanted to just have them in my stash so that the next time I get an urge to knit up some Oakwood socks, I've got a couple of skeins that I can use.
Our next patron exclusive show is actually happening on Saturday. Now, you can watch this anytime you like, so you don't have to join us live. But if you do want to join us live, it's happening on Saturday, this Saturday. The full details on how you can access the show are linked in the show notes below. Basically, we will post a link at 1:30 British summertime on Saturday. You follow that link and then you can watch the show live, or you just wait until 3:10, and after 3:10 on Saturday you can watch the show anytime that you like.
Yeah.
And don't miss it, because we got requested to do an Ask the Bears section where you can send us any questions that you would like to ask. And I said no problem, and we put out a note to say, let us know any questions, and we've had a lot.
Yeah.
So we're actually going to make that a bigger focus than we normally would. So we'll get through, hopefully, all of those questions. And it's going to be a great show. Also, as well, we've mentioned the Summer of Stitching loads in this show today. So please do come and join us for that. Obviously, Kay has already finished and we've shown you the Beachcomber socks. You can still access that series, but right now,
really popular. Those socks have been hugely popular.
I know.
Thank you all so much to our patrons, because I've had such amazing feedback for that design. You've all just absolutely loved it, so thank you all so much.
come and join in the rest of the summer of stitching fun as we get into the cross stitch and the bag making.
Yes.
And also some great summer of stitching reviews from our wonderful Knitability editor, Jen, who is working on the next issue of Knitability, which I think is going to be coming out on the 11th of July.
Yeah.
So watch this space for that one. But that, folks, I think is it. So thank you so much for watching. And
Thank you,
see
everybody.
you in 2 weeks for a brand new show,
Yeah.
which will feature a brand new episode of My Favourite Blanket.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Sitting and knitting, it's Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. Enthusiasm's not quitting for Dan and Kay, the bakery bears. They'll take you to fabulous places of which their favorites they'll share. You better buy a pattern and get yourself a bakery bear. You'll find yourself in a castle watching the bakery bears. It never feels like a hassle to sit and watch the bakery bears. What's on your shelf or what